Hello and welcome to the Pop Council podcast, the show where we cover everything in pop culture. Each week on this show, we discuss topics in the geek world, as well as various fandoms such as Disney, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, theme parks, and everything in between. I'm Jami, Philbrick, editor-in-chief of Movie Phone, and one of your hosts for this wonderful show. This week, we've got a great one for you. We're going to be discussing Constantine 2 with Keanu Reeves, big announcement, a new Karate Kid movie, the trailer for School for Good and Evil. We'll also discuss ongoing She-Hulk Attorney at Law, Daredevil is coming, and the Rings of Power. Who is the stranger? But it would not be a Pop Council if I wasn't joined by my lovely co-host, Wendy Lee. Hey, Wendy.
Hello, how are you, Jamie? I feel like it's been like a minute since I've seen you. I think it was only, last week on the show, but then in person, D23.
Yep, D23. I was walking through a crowd, being escorted backstage for interviews, and I hear, Jami. I'm like, what's going on? Oh, it's Wendy!
Who's calling me?
Yeah. So it's nice bumping into you guys back there.
Yeah, absolutely.
How was your week after D23, kind of coming down from it and the weekend?
Busy. There's been a lot of work. I got some deadlines coming up tomorrow and the day after, so I am in work mode.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
It's good and it's bad because I don't like to be up against the deadline, but it's fine. This is how it is.
Welcome to my world. It's a deadline. I've got 3 or 4 deadlines every day.
Ooh.
And we've got a busy week. Got some good screenings this week. I'm going to I'm maybe not able to say what I'm seeing tomorrow night, but I'm seeing the Olivia Wilde movie that's had all the controversy.
I will see you there.
Darling on Tuesday. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I think I can say I'm seeing Bros this week. I think I can say that.
Oh, cool.
That's coming out next week. But then a little mystery screening maybe for me this week as well.
Nice.
Yeah, but Wendy, we cannot talk about all the great topics we have to talk about today without a third member of the council and returning champion joining us again, Joel Amos. Hey, Joel, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Very good, Jamie's son, Wendy's son.
Yes, a little tease of what we have coming up. How are you doing? It's been a little while since you've been on the show. Remind everyone a little bit about yourself.
Name's Joel Amos. I am the Movie Mensch. I could be found at themoviemensch.com, where I do a lot of reviews, interviews, and of the like. I've been doing this for 22 something years, and a proud member of the Hollywood Critics Association, as are these two fine folks, and just love talking about everything pop culture. Mom, once upon a time, this is for you. You said this is a bunch of useless knowledge, and now I beg to differ.
I think all our parents said that probably at one point.
Right.
And the joke's on them now. Well, let's get right to it. There was actually some big news on Friday. This was one I didn't quite see coming, although we've had some hints. There was a 2020, I believe the first Comic-Con at home, virtual Comic-Con. There wasn't a lot of stuff at that Comic-Con, but one of the big things was a 15th anniversary reunion for the Constantine movie that, of course, starred Keanu Reeves as John Constantine, the DC magician. Akiva Goldsman and Francis Lawrence, I believe, were also at that panel at Comic-Con 2020. And it was sort of, I think there was a question asked about the future of their Constantine franchise and if we could see a sequel. And, we got some hints and like, yeah, there's something, maybe, blah, 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 but I just didn't really believe any of it. Like the idea of, this movie coming back and Keanu coming back to this character didn't seem really viable to me, especially since we already had a Constantine played by Matt Ryan on DC television, on the CW shows. And of course, J.J. Abrams is in, we'll get to that, in production, pre-production on a Constantine HBO Max series. I believe they may have even cast an actor for that already. That series has now, and this was sort of quieter news over the weekend, but that series is no longer in production. That series has been canceled by HBO Max. So that tells you a little bit about the HBO Max side of things now with the Warner Brothers Discovery. You know, we already knew with Batgirl kind of the direction they were going with that. I think Peacemaker and certainly this final season of Titans are safe because they're already in the can, but does look like they're trying to get away from DC content over at HBO Max. And then it's just interesting, like the idea of, you know, what they're doing with the DC films moving forward, you know, talking about like, we really want to move forward and have our own thing and have it be like Marvel. But now we're going back to the John Constantine series from 15 years ago. But it makes sense business side because Keanu Reeves, huge star, who doesn't want to be in business with Keanu? You know, if it's a character, the interesting thing to me is I'm a huge John Constantine fan, and Joel, you know this, and Wendy, you know this, that Green Arrow is my number one character, but John Constantine is my number two. And I love the Keanu Reeves Constantine movie, but it wasn't John Constantine, the character. He's playing Keanu Reeves as John Constantine, which is fine. And I'm all in for seeing another version of it, but it would be nice to still have like a comic accurate John Constantine, the way we had, you know, British and blonde hair, and kind of the way we had chain smoking on Legends of Tomorrow and some of the CW shows. And it also makes me wonder, because if you remember, Constantine was one of the first comic book movies that to have an end credit scene. I think even before Iron Man, the end credit scene hints at the fact that Shia LaBeouf would be returning for a possible sequel, because spoiler alert, he dies during the first Constantine film, but the end credit scene shows his angel, his ghost, rising from his grave. So given all of the thoughts about Shia these days, is there a chance that he may return? Wendy, I'm going to start with you. What do you think of a John Constantine sequel? Did you like Keanu's performance as John Constantine? And what do you think about, you know, Shia possibly returning?
So it's been so long that I barely can remember this movie, but I will say this was definitely a DC character that I wasn't too knowledgeable on when I went in and saw it. So there's a difference, like, you know, for example, this is your second favorite character in DC, Jami, and so you had a different perspective of what you were expecting and hoping to see when you went into the film, whereas I kind of went in like I was, you know, I love Keanu Reeves. I can't wait to see him in this movie. So I enjoyed it for what it was, but I totally understand, you know, where you're coming from as a fan of like Constantine, the character. It is very interesting that WBD is deciding to do a sequel, a follow-up, I assume, to the 2005 Constantine. And if this is a part of their 10-year plan, and you're right, you said that, you know, Keanu is obviously well-loved. His films do well. So why wouldn't you want to have him come back as Constantine? It's really interesting because it came out in 2005, the first one, and it's been years. And then since then we've had, you know, Constantine in the TV show. So where will it go? Can they exactly pick it up from where the first one left off? Or will they do a time jump, which I think is actually probably better? And I am curious. I totally forgot about that end credit scene with Shia. So I wonder, it's possible. It's not like Shia doesn't act.
Right.
So it's possible that he makes, you know, a return to the movie as well. It's interesting. I'm interested to see, to read a little bit more about it once they release more information.
Yeah, and just I want to be clear, like I really did enjoy the Constantine movie, and Keanu. I actually watched it. It's on Netflix or something. I watched it again this weekend. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's the only comic book character performance I can think of where I believe that it was completely opposite of what the character should be, but I really enjoyed it for what it was. Do you know what I mean? I really, absolutely. It's a Keanu Reeves, you know, magical kind of movie, and I like that a lot. You know, so I'm interested in seeing his performance. I don't know if there's any way of bridging sort of the Constantine things that we know of the actual character into it. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't want to dye him blonde or have Keanu try to do a British accent all of a sudden or anything like that. Like, I
Yeah,
think
they got to keep it the same.
he needs to keep it the Keanu Constantine, but maybe we can get the tan overcoat instead of the sort of, because I think you brought up a good point, Wendy. This is a 2005 movie. So if we remember superhero movies in 2005, that was way before the MCU. That was a very early, and I think it's not, wrong to say that those early superhero movies of this century were sort of taking nods from the Matrix, right? The leather costumes on the X-Men, they were the early superhero films of this century, I think, are a little bit more influenced by Matrix than we've now, obviously, with the MCU, we're really embracing the comic book accurate costumes, but that was way in the early 2000s. And so I think it would be interesting to see how they can sort of update it to what comic book fans expect these days. I would, like you said, I think it'll be a time jump. I think they'll embrace more of the, I think they tried to real world it, right? In 2005, they really tried to, it's based in actual LA, that, you know what I mean? Like, I'd like to see them obviously keep it in the Keanu Constantine realm, but maybe up the DC. And, listen, we got Black Adam opening this month, or next month in October. That's DC Magic. So there are ways. It would be really interesting. Dr. Fate with Pierce Brosnan's being introduced. So I wonder. It'll be interesting to see like how much of this is really like a straight up sequel to a 2005 hit film. Also noting that Constantine was the biggest grossing DC film before Wonder Woman and Aquaman that did not feature Batman or Superman. So it was a box office hit. So is this a straight up 2005, sequel, or is it like a kind of a rebooting, remaking, move forward for DC with Constantine? It'll be interesting to see. Joel, what are your thoughts on a Keanu-led John Constantine sequel?
I think about this from two angles. One, this is a lot more to do with Keanu Reeves than it has to do with Constantine. I think, we're going back through Keanu's library, and there was a new Matrix. I mean, who would have ever thought we would have gotten a fourth Matrix? But yet, here we are. And also, it's not unusual anymore. At first, even, for Anchorman 2, we were like, wow, it's been a few years since the first one. But now it's like people don't blink, bat an eye at a movie getting a sequel, 17, 18 years later. So I think, exactly. That's the perfect example. And so in a lot of ways, I think that this can be almost a standalone movie. Like it doesn't have to do with anything, potentially. It could just be a good Constantine movie, picking up on where they left off in 2005, even though the character's different. And it's more of a Keanu Reeves vehicle. But I also think they need to be very careful because the John Wickifying of everything.
Right.
I don't think you want to. You got to make it different in some ways, because John Wick 4 is coming, and they're shooting John Wick 5, and so we had a Bill and Ted sequel years after the first one. So it's the gates are open, but what's going to come rushing through, I'm not quite sure. But I can't say that I'm surprised.
Yeah, that's all really interesting. I hadn't thought about how many, Matrix and Bill and Ted's, how many sort of revisiting of the Keanu during this Keanu-sance that we've been having, sort of the revisiting of his films. I mean, listen, I would love to see Johnny Utah come back in a Point Break 2, just throwing that out there. If we're going to revisit all of the Keanu stuff, Johnny Utah.
I was going to ask you guys, what Keanu movie would you like to see part 2?
Yeah, that would be for me. I mean, they
Utah?
messed it up a little bit with the Point Break remake, but I think we can ignore. Most people ignored that ever happened, so we can continue.
All the more reason to do a sequel.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The idea that it's more on the Keanu side, and I don't think that that's probably wrong. And it'll be interesting to see. We talked about Shia, but also Tilda Swinton was great as Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
Played the devil. Those are two characters that very easily could come back. I believe because I just watched it, I know Lucifer ends as in a human form, so she could be causing all sorts of trouble for Constantine. I don't think Rachel Weisz would come back, just because it seems like her character kind of had her full arc in the series in the first film, and I also don't necessarily think Rachel Weisz would want to come back for Constantine 2, but who knows? So it'll be interesting to see. I definitely Jamun Hansun as Papa Midnight, who's a big supporting character in the comics. Yeah, for Constantine, they just sort of teased him in the first movie, so that would be great too. So a lot of cool things. I mean, I think this was great news. I'm for one really excited and interested in it. So we'll follow this story as the film goes into production. And another, not quite as recent as 2005, but going all the way back to 1984, we got some interesting news over the weekend that I also, I think we could kind of maybe have thought this was coming, but I didn't quite expect this. News of a new Karate Kid film hit over the weekend. And what exactly this would be at first was sort of a mystery. The idea is, could it be a sequel to the original franchise? Well, that's pretty much what Cobra Kai is.
Correct.
Is this a Cobra Kai movie? Well, John Horowitz, the one of the showrunners, creators of that, tweeted actually today, no, this has nothing to do with Cobra Kai. This is a brand new. So then the thoughts were: is it a prequel? Is it a reboot? Is it according to what I'm hearing now, the sources is it is a brand new reboot, if you will, retelling of the Karate Kid story. The twist in this one is it's a young boy who moves with his mother from Beijing to Brooklyn.
Okay.
And he's already a karate master.
Oh.
And he becomes friends with a girl, and that girl's father is who he ends up training. So it's a sort of I know, it's weird, Wendy, right? It's a reverse swap where the kid is Mr. Miyagi, and Daniel is essentially Elizabeth Shue's dad, if you will. I know.
Is there a reason why the dad wants training?
I'm sure there is. I didn't quite get that reason in that, if he's getting bullied or what, I didn't get at work or what, I didn't, that information I don't have yet. But that's just what what is being reported. Listen, I was thinking prequel, because I was thinking, okay, if it's not Cobra Kai, right? If it's not a sequel to the original Daniel story, then what could it be if it's not a remake? Clearly this sounds more like a remake, reboot sort of thing. So I was thinking prequel, Mr. Miyagi story, right? You cast a young Mr. Miyagi, maybe in his 20s, early 30s, and
he's moving from Beijing and not.
No. I'm saying no, not in what they're saying. I'm saying this in a perfect world. This is what I would have wanted.
Understand?
What I would have wanted is not that this is a remake.
Gotcha.
That ludicrous story about teaching the dad. That's what it sounds like they're really doing. That's not what I'm advocating. I'm advocating I wish it had been a prequel about a young Mr. Miyagi coming, leaving where he lived in, his homeland that we saw in Karate Kid 2, and how he moved to California or his early days here. Like that to me seems way more interesting than retelling this story with some kind of weird father training the kid's already the expert twist. Anyways, that's what I'm throwing out there. Wendy, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts of another Karate Kid, it not being necessarily connected to the sort of Daniel Cobra Kai world of the originals, and this weird sort of father-son twist thing?
I mean, it's going to be interesting because, when you say Karate Kid, we all think Mr. Miyagi and Daniel, right? And it's been clarified now that it has nothing to do with the original one. And
correct.
anything that's related to that world. So this essentially would be a reboot, which means the one with Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith also probably will not be referred to in this one. I, to be completely honest, because of the success of Cobra Kai currently, I don't really see this film super necessary. Not saying that I'm not going to go see it. I'm not hating on it or anything like that. I'm probably going to go see it because I'm a sucker for, like you say, Karate Kid. My ears go, huh? I'm there. Here's, take my money. But it's just really interesting. And, and I don't necessarily need everything to like connect. Like if it wants to be its own standalone thing, so be it. That's fine. But I am curious as to what story they're going to tell. So if they're going to do the, kind of the swap of the character where the karate master is younger and they're teaching someone who is older, and there could be an interesting, like, father and son sort of a thing there. That could be an interesting way to tell the story.
Yeah, it could be. It could totally work. I mean, I am more of the thought that, like, and especially in this day and age where everything is sort of, a legacy sequel and somehow connecting to the old thing. And, and I get why we're kind of rehashing these IPs, and obviously Cobra Kai has become very popular. It just makes more sense to me to do some sort of move forward Cobra Kai movie, or like I said, like Mr. Miyagi prequel, or something that connects directly to this world, as opposed to another remake, another, story that's not connected. Although I will say that I have heard the showrunners of Cobra Kai mention that in their mind, anything Karate Kid related fits into the world, right? So Hilary Swank being part of Karate Kid 4, that she was trained by Miyagi, that's always an option, that they could be headed in that direction, right? Embrace that. But also I've heard them say, not specifically about this new one, but that the Jaden Smith version also somehow kind of connects into their world, even though Jackie Chan wasn't playing Mr. Miyagi and those were completely different characters. So it's all the same franchise in their mind. So just because they're going in this other sort of reboot remake direction, that doesn't mean that at some point it couldn't somehow be incorporated all into the same Karate Kid world. But we'll have to wait and see. Joel, what are your thoughts on another Karate Kid and the direction that at this point is rumored that they are taking?
My initial first thoughts were that old Community saying, 6 seasons in a movie. Like Cobra Kai does 6 seasons and then kind of a movie.
Right.
And then I read about it and I'm like, no, that's not what they're talking about at all. Although I kind of think that would be a good idea, especially to capitalize on the success of Cobra Kai. But you know what? It's also like the Rian Johnson Star Wars trilogy that's still being talked about. It could be something in the Karate Kid world that has absolutely nothing to do with anything we've ever seen before. So it could just be a fresh start. That the name Karate Kid is what's going to draw people in, and the story will hopefully grab us. I'm not sure. I'm not surprised that they've greenlit a movie. I mean, in Hollywood is anything, they like to strike when the iron's hot, and the iron is certainly scorching right now with Cobra Kai. So let's throw a movie at the audience and see what happens.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I'm sure that this has a lot to do with the fact that the name, the IP is so hot right now from Cobra Kai, which is why it's a little bit of a shame that we're going to get another, a different, but you're right. It maybe somehow it can kind of connect to this world as well. It would make more sense to do some sort of a sequel Cobra Kai film, but they did say in the tweet today, Horowitz did say that there are options in the future. That is something that they want to do. So we'll see how it goes as we move forward in the world of the Karate Kid. But moving on, we had actually an interesting trailer this week. There are a lot of trailers. Not all kind of fit into the Pop Council reign here. That's why we're skipping the Whitney Houston trailer, although I loved that. I thought that looked so good. But we are going to talk about The School for Good and Evil, based on the popular novels. This is being adapted to Netflix by Paul Feig, of course, the great director of Bridesmaids, Ghostbusters, Answering the Call, Spy, and many others. So I believe there'll probably be a little bit of a comedic bend to this, since that's what we know Mr. Feig from. You can see Charlize Theron and Kerry Washington in this photo, as well as Michelle Yeoh, who is in the film. I believe Lawrence Fishburne and several others. The story is basically, it's in the title. It's a school for good and evil. They're teaching students both to be heroes and to be villains. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there. Obviously, for the film to tap into, a lot of visual effects we can see from the trailer as well. I'm not familiar with the books. I think they're kind of YA novels. So not really in my wheelhouse, but I did enjoy the trailer. I like Paul Feig a lot. I like his work. I think he got a bad rap with Ghostbusters. And so I love the fact that he's got another sort of big visual, not just a comedy, but a visual effects, film that maybe a little bit more four quadrants and hits everything. And, great cast of actresses and actors. I mean, really great cast. So for me, I'm open to this. I'm looking forward to it. I'll definitely check it out when it's on Netflix. Wendy, what were your thoughts? Were you familiar with this series, and what do you think from the trailer?
I was not familiar with this series, so now I've added it all to my Audible wish list so I can go ahead and start listening to it. I do love a YA book every now and again, so I am looking forward to getting into it. The trailer looks really, really good. I think the premise is really interesting, kind of taking what we know of the villains and the heroes of fairy tales and then put them in this school. And I was actually kind of surprised when I was looking at it and I saw that it was Paul Feig because you mentioned that, he generally does not only comedy, but there's a lot of things that he directs that, is rooted in comedy. But in the trailer, I feel like I saw less of that. So I imagine we will get the comedy aspect of it towards the first couple of episodes. This is a series, correct? Or is this a movie?
It's a film.
It's a film. Okay. So it looks dark. So maybe the comedy in the beginning when the girls first enter the school, but then later on, I feel like the stakes are kind of high because, what's happening to their friendship, and is she going to be a villain forever? And I love the cast. So this is I am the target audience 100%.
Yeah, no, and it's important to also mention about Feig. Simple Favor was definitely his first, I think, sort of foray into not necessarily straight up comedy, suspense. I don't know quite how you would describe that film, but it's very good, but suspenseful, right? So, and obviously has had visual effects work with Ghostbusters and Spy and stuff like that. So, and also you reminded me that in the trailer, it does seem like there's connections to famous fairy tales. They do mention Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk and Snow White and Cinderella as former students of the school. So I think that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of where the story is going as well. Joel, familiar with the books? What do you think of the trailer?
No, and I think YA was really hot there for quite a few minutes, not just a hot minute, but several minutes.
Yep.
And it's taking kind of a cool down, and it's due for a bit of a resurgence. I think there's a new generation of YA readers that are eager for something like this, and something about the supernatural in YA has proven over history to be a match made in heaven. I also think I see a lot of that kind of Simple Favor feel that Paul brings to this that really has me kind of excited. And if nothing else, I mean, you look at The Heat, you look at some of his films that are action comedies also, the man, you strip everything away, regardless of the genre. I think he's just a great storyteller. And so this looks like a story that's ripe to be told. And with the stellar cast like he's got, I mean, I think I had not heard anything of this, but I did my research for the show today, and no, I'm pretty excited about this. I think it has all the elements to be something kind of special.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made a good point about YA. Obviously YA books, the you know Hunger Games series and everything was really popular for a
Divergent.
little while. Yeah, I'm still waiting for the final Divergent film, so let's see how that goes. I'm still waiting. And I don't know if anyone has noticed this. They have collections on HBO Max. You can click on the whole Matrix collection, the whole Lords of the Rings or Hobbit collection. They have a Divergent collection, and I'm like, yeah, but that's not complete. How can you have the Divergent collection? You don't have a third movie. Like, you never made a third movie.
Yeah.
So
what
anyways,
happened?
Lionsgate happened. I can tell you about that. But yeah, and the second one just didn't. Well, and also, you know, I think the Divergent series was counting on some of the actors becoming bigger stars than they did. Shailene Woodley, Jai Courtney. I can't even remember the other Theo something was the other actor.
Yeah,
What's his last name?
Theo James.
Theo James. Yeah. And I think that the studio expected, though, Miles Teller is probably the biggest name out of any of those movies, and he had like the fourth or fifth supporting role. So, yeah, the Divergent series, a little bit disappointing. But moving on to a series that actually I think we all really, really are enjoying, which is She-Hulk. We had was it the fifth episode this week? Fifth episode of She-Hulk. We got to see a little bit of conclusion of the court case Titania had against She-Hulk about using her name. But the really exciting part, I think, of this week's episode was Jennifer went to a secret clothing designer who only designs for you can think of it like designing for the stars. He only designs for the biggest and best superheroes and villains, and designed a new costume for She-Hulk, which we didn't get to see this week, but we did get to see a costume that this man was working on for another client, and in the final sort of sting. And also interesting that this is the first episode in the series that does not have an end credit scene. I thought, yes, wasn't that interesting? I think because basically the end credit was the final stinger, which is on Daredevil's new yellow costume, which this designer is making. So we all know that Charlie Cox is coming back as Daredevil on She-Hulk, eventually on Daredevil, Born Again. Thank you. I was like, Born Again. And so, I think we got to see a little. I was backstage, so I didn't see it, but you actually got to see, Wendy, right? Some of the scene between Daredevil and She-Hulk.
Yes. Yeah, I really liked it. They obviously
the next episode. Is that the next?
Potentially, but I feel like we need one in between. I would love it if he was already in the next episode, but I feel like we need one in between because all we got was just a little tiny peek at the helmet.
Yep.
We need to set up why Matt Murdock is in LA, because he's New York based. So why is he there? And establish some sort of a, like, how do they know each other connection between Jennifer Walters and Matt Murdock before they can get to the scene that we saw in D23.
What was the scene? Can you describe the scene you saw?
Sure. It's a rooftop scene, and they are kind of talking. They're kind of like quipping back and forth, as lawyers do. Just like it's a very quick back and forth, which I love that exchange. And kind of explaining their strategy of going into the warehouse, of taking on these henchmen. There's a fun discussion on what is a henchman and what is a goon or something like that. It's a little playful, but not too goofy. So I know people are worried about like, oh, Daredevil's going to be too goofy in this show because She-Hulk essentially has a more of a comedic vibe to it. That's not the case at all from what I saw. I feel like it fit in well, but it still fit the Matt Murdock that we want. But in the world of She-Hulk, if that makes sense. So they kind of talk about it. There's no action scene, so it's just really the dialogue between Jennifer and She-Hulk. And so in this scene, it is established that they know each other and they know each other's superhero. Well, I mean, Jennifer's not trying to hide her superhero's persona, but Matt is, and she knows that Daredevil is Matt. So that's why I think we need one episode in between.
Yeah, now that you've explained that, that sounds like that makes a little bit more sense. I mean, I actually thought since they showed you that scene at D23 last weekend that we would that scene was going to be in this week's episode. And
it could be. They could expedite it real quick.
No, I thought it was going to be the episode we just saw. I thought it was going to be an episode 5 because it would make sense to me that they would show it the week before it's going to air. But yeah, you've convinced me that maybe it's not even this week's episode. Maybe it's a couple more episodes down
it
the
might
line.
be. Yeah, it might be.
Because it makes it sound like that they're fighting something together. And I don't think we're quite there yet. I mean, it's probably the wrecking crew and those guys that attacked her.
Yes. And, you know, they did mention the leader. Like, they announced that. Who's coming back and playing him. So I don't know if that's all going to connect together or what.
But clearly, they're working for someone. And I think we even know it's a female because I think they say in that episode she's going to be upset. So chances are it's probably Titania. Yeah, Titania. But who knows at this point? Joel, let me ask you this. First of all, are you excited to see Daredevil back? Charlie Cox back as Daredevil, not only on She-Hulk, but on his own series. And, you know, obviously it's pretty much confirmed now from the scene that Wendy saw and what we saw this week that at least in She-Hulk, he'll be wearing the yellow and red costume. But do you think that's going to be the MCU costume moving forward? Or do you think we'll get the pure red at some point in the new series?
I am excited. First of all, I like the character Daredevil quite a bit. I think the potential for it being a huge character in that studio's cachet is huge. It just hasn't had the perfect story, and so I keep holding out, thinking that, you know, the world at large should discover Daredevil. It really, really should, because it's such a rich character. But I'm also just really excited for She-Hulk, because the tone of the show is unlike anything we've seen before. It further proves that there are countless characters out there that we haven't even explored yet, and we have the perfect landscape that is streaming television to explore these characters before you introduce them to an MCU or a DCU or whatever we're talking about. And I think that, you know, more than anything else, is the triumph of She-Hulk, is its ability to introduce a character that probably most people that even consider themselves comic book passive readers hadn't heard of, and probably hadn't read, I should say. And now, you know, the world knows She-Hulk. And I just think, you know, this is a statement to the storytelling teams that they have at these studios and these companies that it's just amazing. It's just amazing. And story is king. So that's why these stories keep doing well. I know people complain, oh, comic book this, but as long as you can write a story as good as they can, please, more power to you.
And what do you think about the costume? Or is it going to stay yellow through the MCU?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Shake things up just a wee bit.
Yeah, Wendy, what do you think? Do you think the yellow costume is maybe at the beginning, you know, the way in the Netflix series he had the black costume and then went red? Do you think we're going to see a transition, or as we know from Kevin and MCU, they like to when they get a character back that they haven't had for a while, they like to really use the aspects of that character that haven't been used in other places.
And I think that is probably the case where we're stopped. Like, why give them just one costume when you can have, this is the MCU, we can have a couple. So yeah, I think eventually we're gonna debut the iconic, the red, the more burgundy red one. But I don't mind this one. Like, I think I'm very excited to see it all, because we've just seen like little teases, kind of like you try to pause at the right point, and it's all blurry. Because they're moving.
I like this costume too, and it's his original costume. I mean, I know everyone knows the red costume the best, and technically the character's original costume in the comics was the black one, but the first kind of cover Stan Lee did with Daredevil, and that was the yellow and red. So I think it's a great choice to start with, definitely to show that this is a different character, even though it's being played by the same actor, a different character than the Netflix series. Maybe not unlike what they did with Kingpin with the white suit but the Hawaiian shirt instead of, you know what I mean? Just make it a little different, make it a little different than what you've seen before. And then, as we saw in Spider-Man No Way Home, we can eventually get to the comic accurate classic costume. I think it's gonna be interesting to see the yellow one, definitely, and especially against the green of She-Hulk. That'll be
yeah, it'll look really good.
Another series that is, I think we just saw the 4th episode this week that I wanted to talk about was Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power on Prime Video. It's a series that started a little slow for me, and there's so many characters and storylines to follow, but I'm really getting into it and really enjoying it. And the part that is most interesting to me, and I think has sort of lit the internet up, is about this character they've introduced named the Stranger. And there are different theories about who the Stranger will eventually be revealed to be. And the two popular ones right now is that this is either a young Saruman or a young Gandalf. And we actually heard a little hint this week that makes me think maybe it's Saruman, or maybe that was a red herring the showrunners put in to make us think it's Saruman and throw us off of the Gandalf trail. Or the other possibility is none of the above, right?
Yeah.
So, Wendy, I'll start with you. How are you enjoying the Lord of the Rings series now that we're 4 episodes in? And what is your theory on the Stranger?
I've been really liking it. I kind of approached cautiously but optimistically, because I do like the lore and I like the world. So I was curious to see what it was. I feel like episode 1 and 2 was a bit of a slow burn, not unlike, and I know it's not related to the Peter Jackson film at all, but Fellowship of the Ring wasn't like action packed from beginning to end. And I also don't need all my shows that are fantasy adventure to be, always action, always something happening all the time. This is a very different type of a show, and I've been enjoying it. I feel like I really liked episode 3 and 4 better than I liked episodes 1 and 2. But I am enjoying, exploring the world and seeing Galadriel and Elrond, and just kind of to get back to Middle Earth and looking at just not the characters, but the costumes, the sets, and everything. As far as the Stranger goes, my first initial thought was, it's got to be Gandalf. And because he is right now, the Harfoots have kind of, taking him in as their own and traveling with him. I feel like maybe later on that would maybe explain why he has such a kinship with the Hobbits.
Yep, absolutely.
But then, kind of like what you said about Saruman, I was like, well, that could be the case as well. And another option, and I know people have talked about this as well, is Radagast, because of his kind of fondness for like all the fauna and the flora. So that could be an option as
Who's
well.
That
but
character? Remind me who that is. Who's that?
Radagast, just another one of the other wizards.
Okay, got it. From the books. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, everything you just said, like Gandalf makes sense. I mean, this is clearly what they're playing off of, right? Is that the Gandalf makes sense with the Hobbit connection, the Harfoots, and the whole thing that makes sense. But then also like this, what was it, an orc or someone that said something about the falling star, and that's Sauron. And again, that could just be a red herring to make us think it's Saruman. I mean, Christopher Lee and, if you're comparing the movies, Christopher Lee and Ian McKellen looked exactly the same in those films, right? And this guy, Daniel Walker, I think's his name, could easily be a younger version of either one. So I think they're definitely playing off of that. And I know from when we interviewed the cast at Movie Phone, the actor was hinting that there are big secrets with the stranger that will be revealed that cannot be. And so I do think it's probably one of those two things. I'd like to think Gandalf, but certainly Saruman is, we don't know. And we also don't know, or maybe we do from the books, like how wizards age. Like, does that all work, like time-wise with where we are? Like, I'm not quite sure, but everyone's been saying that it's one of the two. So I'll just go along that could work out, time. I don't know how old, how wizards age in Middle Earth, but
slowly.
but yeah, one would imagine, and so I could see it being either one. Joel, how are you liking the series, and what is your theory on the stranger?
Yes, I do agree. Wizards do age rather slowly, but we did have that one instance of Gandalf the Grey becoming Gandalf the White rather quickly.
Right.
But that is the exception, not the rule. I love everything Tolkien. I love this world. I inhaled it as a kid. I inhaled it as a teenager. I inhaled it as a college kid. I inhaled the movies. But this show started really slow for me. And I just was like, just stick with it. Just stick with it. It's the Tolkien world. You love the Tolkien world. And by episode 4, I'm enjoying it. I am. It took a little while to get going. I'm identifying with the characters. I can start to see how they've spent that $1 billion of production money. It looks like a $1 billion TV show. And as far as The Stranger goes, I think maybe it is Gandalf, but I think at this point we can also argue that it's a blank canvas. That maybe the showrunners and producers know which way they're going, but at the same time, we have an option to follow any number of avenues.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, they're definitely playing it close to the vest. That's for sure. I would think that. I'm pretty sure the first season's in the can, so I would imagine they made a decision and stuck with it. But we'll see. And I agree with both of you. My review of the first 2 episodes, I enjoyed it. I thought clearly the money was there. The production value was gorgeous. I liked the actors. I liked the characters that was being introduced, but I did feel that it was a lot of setup in the first 2 episodes. B, it was a little slow because of that. And C, I felt like I needed a PhD in Tolkien to understand what was going on. Like, it was such an encyclopedia. The first 2 episodes really unfold like a Tolkien encyclopedia, and you're just being thrown like this place and that place and this one and that one. And I feel as episode 3 and 4 have come to pass, we've gotten to spend a little bit more time with these characters. I can now identify there's 4 storylines, right? There's the Harfoot's stranger storyline. There's the storyline with her and kind of bringing the armies of man together to fight this evil. Then you have Browning and the Sauron whisperer, her son with the sword, and the other elf, and then what's the last one? There's like a 4th one, but there's really just these 4 storylines and all these characters to follow. Oh, the making of the rings with the dwarfs. That's the 4th one. So I feel like with the first 2 episodes, it was too much to kind of keep clear. But now, as episode 3 and 4 are unfolding, and we get to spend a little bit more time in each of the sort of storylines, that it's a little bit easier to follow, and I'm really enjoying it. So I agree with both of you. We've got a couple of minutes left, and I know we weren't necessarily going to talk about it, but let's just go around the horn, because we've all seen the first 4 episodes of Andor, which will premiere on Wednesday, September 21st, which happens to be my birthday. So thank you, Disney.
Oh, happy early birthday.
Happy birthday, Jami.
Of Andor, but I've already seen it. But I can at least rewatch them on Disney Plus. I'll give my thoughts after, but let's start with Wendy. What are your just kind of off the cuff, not a review, but just sort of initial reaction to the first 4 episodes?
The initial thought was, this show is probably the most cinematic Star Wars show that we have so far. The I don't know how much of the volume they're using in this one because I feel like a lot of it is actually on location. So it's super cinematic. I am way more invested in these characters than I thought that I would be. And I was already looking forward to the series. So every episode kind of, especially we get, later on in the episodes, like I won't say which one,
Don't say.
but I am on the edge of my seat for one of them. And you're not just it's cool because you're seeing the different aspects of this galaxy, right? The super vast world. And it's, the people who built the rebellion, the people that are in the empire, and the inner workings of it all, the politics of it all. It's so interesting. And I can't wait because we get 12 episodes for this season, and then we get another season of 12. That's going to lead us right into Rogue One. So this is definitely one to watch for.
Yeah, I can answer actually one of the question you just asked, Wendy. I don't believe they're using the volume at all.
Oh.
I believe that because it's not really a Favreau Filoni series. It's
Correct.
really, and I'm of course blanking on his name, but the writer,
Tony Gilroy.
Tony Gilroy.
Dan Gilroy wrote it, I think.
Or the Bournes, and yeah, Tony. So this is really, it's Rogue One Part 2. You know what I mean? They're really doing it their way as opposed to the way the other shows have been done, led by John and Dave. Joel, what are your thoughts on what you've seen so far of Andor?
I'm loving it so far. I really am. And Rogue One is my favorite standalone Star Wars movie. I mean, that's just a great movie, period. And to see where these characters kind of emanated from, and how things are leading up to what we know is going to happen. I mean, I love stories like that because it still keeps you guessing. That's a sign of a good storyteller, which we have in Gilroy. And honestly, I could watch Diego Luna read the telephone book and it would be thrilling. And I think that guy has magic pulsating through his veins when it comes to acting. And there's something about his command of this particular character that is beyond compelling, and you just cannot look away. You are pulling for him. I'm thrilled that this story is told essentially through his eyes, and I'm on board. And like Wendy said, I mean, I'm 4 episodes in. That leaves 8, 12, 20 more episodes. I couldn't be more thrilled.
I'll give my take. It's a little bit different than both of yours. I love Star Wars, so I'm going to enjoy anything set in the Star Wars universe. I did think the first couple episodes were a little slow. There's a lot of setup, backstory. I am not, and I should really give it another watch, but I was not initially as big a fan as Rogue One as a lot of people.
Okay.
Are. And so I do feel that if you are not invested in Rogue One, you may have a hard time getting invested in the series in the beginning. There were things that happened later in the episodes that I really enjoyed and were interesting and caught my interest, but based on the first couple, not quite so much. It's sort of slow for me. And again, not coming from a place where I'm not as invested in the Rogue One story, I found it a little difficult to get invested in this, but it was easier as it moves along. So that's all I'll say about that. But I did enjoy what I saw, and there's no such thing as except for the holiday special. There's no such thing as a bad Star Wars. So I think we can all agree on that. Yeah, there you go. But I think let's call it a wrap. That's pretty much it. That's everything we were going to talk about today. As always, we want to thank you, our audience, for tuning in and remind you we're just one of the shows on the Hollywood Critics Association's YouTube channel. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, like this video, and tune in to Pop Council every Monday at 11 a.m. We want to thank Joel Amos for joining us. Yay! Joel, tell everyone where they can check out your work.
Thanks for having me back. MovieMensch.com, and you can check me up. MovieMensch.com. The Mensch is a good man in the Jewish religion. Thus, moi. On Joel_D_Amos.
Awesome. And Wendy, and we got another one, number 71 in the
I know.
books.
It's crazy.
We're-
71 episodes.
We're slowly approaching 100.
What are we gonna do for 100? We should get all the people back.
They just have 50 Zoom rooms and everyone talking at the same time. Wendy, let everyone know where they can check out all your great stuff.
What a great conversation today. You guys can find me across all social platforms at my name, Wendy Lee Szany. Just take out the space and put in the name, and you will find me on all the platforms. You can find me on YouTube under the Movie Couple channel, where we talk movies, TV shows, theme parks, and more. And the Movie Couple actually launched a website about 2 weeks ago. So themoviecouple.com.
Oh, themoviecouple.com. I'm going to have to check that out.
I did it. It was hard, but I did it. Thank you.
And I'm Jami Philbrick, and you can find me over at Movie Phone. You can check us out for all your listings, showtimes, news, reviews, interviews, and so much more. And if you want to find me on Facebook at my name, or Philbrick at Twitter and Instagram. We will see you all next week on another Pop Council. Thank you all for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.